Hi, this is Philip. I produce under the name Tiger Scientist, and today I wanted to share with you a couple things I've been using the new Bassline Generator from Reason Studios for. Now, one of the things I really love about Reason just in general is I find it a very inspiring tool for creativity, and I really find that at times you could even call it a songwriting partner, maybe. And so I think that the Bassline Generator is very much in that same spirit, and I've been having a lot of fun playing with it here. So what I've done here today is I've pulled in a song that I've been working on, unreleased, that, long story short, I like the song a lot. It's pretty simple, but it still needs bass line and some other parts. So I thought that'd be a great place to start today. Let's use Bassline Generator to generate a bass line. So here in Pro Tools, I have an instance of the Reason rack, and I've seen a lot of talk about Bassline Generator being used for electronic music and electronic bass lines, and it's super awesome for things like that. But I just wanted to see if I could get good results trying to go for something a bit more acoustic or organic. So to that end, from the Reason sound bank, I pulled in this Macca Beatles bass. And I also obviously have Bassline Generator here, and then I've also pulled in an instance of Scales and Chords. I've turned off the chords mode in Scales and Chords because we want just single notes as a bass line. And I've set to the key of the song, which here is E major. And from there, it's really just about experimenting. Real quick little workflow thing. I've set Bassline Generator here to sequence and key, which means it'll be triggered when I hit MIDI notes, or the sequences will be triggered by the MIDI notes that I hit, or the MIDI notes that I already have programmed into my timeline. So what that means is that here in Pro Tools, I've just drawn in one long MIDI note for each chord progression, or each chord in the progression, and it's the root note. And I don't have to worry about figuring out the exact rhythms that I want quite yet, or which notes I want to hop around yet, because I can do all that in Bassline Generator, which is a humongous time saver and workflow help for me at least, because I know that when I'm experimenting, trying to write a new part, one of the most frustrating things is having an idea that you think is okay, and then you go on to another one, but then you think like, oh, maybe I should go back to that one I was just at, and then you don't remember it anymore. So that doesn't happen anymore to me. So let's just see what happens here. We've got this set up, and I hit play. And so this is the loop. It's just a little guitar thing and some drums. And then if we turn on Bassline Generator, unmute it here, we can start experimenting with the different patterns here. And just moving things around until we find something that we like. It's got some good groove to it. Now, one of the things I really love here is the pattern select slots up here, which, as I was just saying about trying to remember ideas and come back to them, this makes it super easy to experiment with things and not worry about having to remember it for later. Because each of these 8 slots up here can have their own unique parameters for everything that you see here, including stuff like the rate and the shuffle mode. So I could experiment with the same bass line in a shuffle mode versus without any shuffle, with different rates, different numbers of steps, obviously different patterns. So really it leaves a lot of space to just, for lack of a better way of putting it, engage with the creativity. So here, I was messing around with it, and I found some patterns I like. I thought this had a good groove to it. You can see like something like this has a lot of cool bounce, but it's maybe a little too busy. But then again, you can also save these for different parts of the songs and then automate between them really easily. What's also great is if you find a pattern that's close, but maybe a couple notes just aren't feeling right, or the groove is just slightly off to you, you can keep that, and then you can go in and manually tweak the pitch, which is what I've done here with this pattern that you're hearing. And honestly, I think that's pretty good for this sort of verse intro part that I'm working on here. So we'll leave that for now. So moving right along, we've got this bass line now at a guitar part. So I'm thinking that maybe next we need some more harmonic elements. I, for whatever reason, feel like I want to add some strings to this. So what I'm going to do is pull up another instance of the Reason rack. And here I'm going to use one of my, well, not even just favorite instruments from Reason, but just favorite instruments in general. I love these friction strings. There's just something about this sort of earthy tone that they have. And I pull up an instance of that, and for the purposes of this video, it's just the default violin setting, I think. Another instance of Bassline Generator, and then another instance of Scales and Chords, again, set to the E major key of the song. But this time, I've left the chords function on. And messed around a little bit with the inversion and open chords as I was experimenting until I found something that, again, you know, it's just sort of trial and error with these devices until I find something that I feel like is resonating with me and I want to dive in and tweak a little further. So again, here we would just hit play, or I would just hit play. We'll unmute this and let's just see some different string parts that this comes up with. Right off the bat, it's at least interesting, yeah? So I'll save that in this slot. Let's see what we've got. It's got a little bit of an interesting bounce. You know, for the heck of it, we can just, you know, try new ideas with randomize if we're at a complete loss of where to start. So that's pretty cool, but with a totally different character than those other ones. Again, messing around earlier, I found a couple patterns that I was kind of into that I saved here in some of these other slots. This is mimicking one of the bass patterns that we had earlier. This could be cool for like a little, maybe an intro or mellower part of the song. And this had a cool, I wouldn't even know how to describe it. It had a good sort of swing to it that I'm actually really liking here. So I'm feeling like this string part and this bass part are working really well together. And really, well, you can see here I had it still in sequence and key mode, so same deal. I'm generating these chords, which I can change the inversions, make them open chords, change the coloration, all sorts of stuff. But all I had to program into the timeline is the one root note of the chord progression that I'm working with here, which, again, I can't express how much time that saves me without having to constantly re-edit the MIDI every time that I want to experiment with a new rhythm. Another big perk, I think, and you can say what you want about your own creativity and compositional skills, but I know for me, like, if I had by hand written 3 or 4 different string parts that I was pretty happy with and thought could work in different parts of the songs, you know, for the sake of time alone, I would probably move on to another part of the song and start writing that. But here, you know, you might want to be careful, but you could generate, honestly, infinite different string parts. And, you know, until you really, really know for sure and feel confident that you found what you're looking for. You don't have to settle. And time is no longer an issue because you can experiment with 8 to 20 to 30 different string parts in 10 minutes or so. So that's just really, really helpful. And I find that it has been really enjoyable to not have to spend the whole time in my session moving MIDI notes around, but to just get to sort of experiment with the parameters in Bassline Generator and dial those in instead until I'm getting something that I like. So having used it here to create a bass line and some chords, I wanted to try and push it a little more and see what else we could do. See if maybe we could get some rhythmic elements in here. So I again went into the Reason sound bank, pulled up a new instance of Reason here in Pro Tools, And I just pulled up this sound called Tambourine, which is being generated by Europa, and pulled in an instance of Bassline Generator on top of that. Now here, of course, we don't need the scales and chords because it's not a melodic element. Really what I'm hoping to use Bassline Generator for in this instance is to take advantage of the different patterns and rhythms that it will generate for this part. So once again, here we can just hit play and I'll start messing around until I find something that I feel is sitting well. So I'm liking this. Let's say I like 95% of what I'm hearing here, but I just want to do some tweaks, but I'm not sure I can do better, so I don't want to ruin this and not be able to come back to it. So what I might do here is just copy this pattern, which is currently in slot 1. Use this just to copy it over to any of these slots that I know aren't being used for this instrument. So I'll just say 2 here. And now I have the same pattern in 2, and I can go in here and change up rhythms, add some new hits, do anything I want really, and see if I'm liking that better. And that's actually kind of interesting. So it's a subtle difference between these two parts, but that can also play to your advantage, and it gives a little bit of extra texture to a song that I can now really easily have different, finely tune even the tambourine part for each different section of the song without feeling like I'm getting too far lost in the weeds or need to be focused on, the 80-20% of getting your song done, which usually does not include endlessly tweaking tambourine MIDI. But I might be alone in that. Feel free to say otherwise. Really quickly here, we have like a completely usable tambourine rhythm here, I think. Don't want to overthink it too much. I will say I experimented with using Bassline Generator to create full drum parts, hooking it up to Kong. But as you might imagine, randomly hitting drum hits, samples, doesn't always lead to the most musical results. Now, that being said, you could, of course, do that. And if you wanted to take the time to set up the inputs so that they're triggering the way that you want and expect, you absolutely could probably create very interesting rhythms and songs in general using that workflow. You see here that I used a tambourine. I also think it would be fun to experiment with maybe some bongos types instruments, anything that's more of just a percussive layer that you might add for groove. You can get that really quickly here. And in essence, you could just generate endless top loops, if you want to think of it that way, with your own samples or with sounds that you built in Europa or any of the other Reason devices. And of course, Bassline Generator goes without saying, you can route it to any other instrument in your DAW as well, which is super awesome. So we've got a bass, we've got a harmonic element with the strings, we've got a tambourine, Ringo here banging around on the drums, and I think the last thing I want to experiment with here is getting some vocal chops in, right? Because who doesn't love vocal chops? So what I did is I really wanted to experiment with using Bassline Generator in another one of Reason's new device, Mimic here, which I also am a huge fan of. I really love this sampler. And I recorded just a scratch a cappella to what will eventually be the vocals for this song. And I imported it into Mimic here. I've put Mimic here in multi-slot mode. And I have the same a cappella drawn into all 5 of these slots. I've just selected different areas to sort of focus on, gone in and done some fine tuning with the various controls here, so that all in all, you hear something like this when you play it. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm a sucker for vocal chops. What can I say? And not only that, there's obviously a million different ways you can do them nowadays. And I almost find it's fun to find new ways to make them, because new techniques, I find, always lead to new ideas and new songs. So what's not to love about that? So again, what I've done here is I've got Mimic. I've set it up as I just described. I've pulled in an instance of Bassline Generator. And here I've also brought in scales and chords. Now, you could theoretically go without using scales and chords, and you might want to, because you don't necessarily want any of the notes that Bassline Generator is creating to be blocked or rerouted to a different note, which is how scales and chords works, unless you do. So in this particular instance, as you can see, I've only used 5 of the 8 slots in Mimic, and I was finding that with Bassline Generator, a lot of times it would be triggering one of those last 3 slots, and obviously no sound would happen. So what I did instead was I created a custom scale here in Scales and Chords, which was just limited to the first 5 notes. So that way, no matter what Bassline Generator created, it would only be triggering one of those 5 slots. And again, from there, it was just a matter of pushing play, listening, and experimenting. So what you're noticing with the vocal chops is because Bassline Generator does tend to favor the root note, the chop that's in slot 1 is getting played a lot more than the other chops a lot of the times. So to that end, what I did is I sort of just found a pattern that I was kind of liking the rhythms and I thought was fairly close to what I might like. And then again, I can just go in and manually move these notes around to trigger different hits, or if I felt like something was getting triggered too often, essentially just to customize it however I like. And there you have it. You really could go down the rabbit hole as far as you want on this, but this video is getting a little long already, so I will end it there. And I just want to close in saying that, I find that where Bassline Generator really excels is in helping you generate ideas that you as the artist or producer then can sift through, curate, and turn into a song that you think will resonate with listeners or convey a story or message that you feel you would like to convey with music. The creative process has many, many parts, but what this does is it allows you to almost have, like I said before, a songwriting partner who will help you come up with ideas that you can then spend your time focusing and refining those ideas into something that you really truly like. All right, thanks for watching and happy creating.